This is your first fiction video. We're going to be talking about plot and conflict, and we're going to talk a little bit about the James Baldwin story, Sonny's Blues. So if you haven't finished reading that yet, please go do so now. Plot is more or less what happens in a story. It's the series of events that make up a story, the actions that the character takes, and the things that result from those actions. And plot is driven by conflict. Characters act because they want something that they can't have, or they have something that they can't keep. So plot is going to be driven by what a character desires and acts to get in the stories that we're reading for this class. The basic shape of a plot, if you think about the amount of tension that is present on the page and in the reader's mind and in the characters' lives, looks kind of like this. We start with very low tension, and then tension builds throughout the story until it reaches a peak, and then the tension is resolved somehow and it dissipates at the end of the story. We have some names for the parts of a story that correspond to these areas of tension, and this shape and these names are all part of what's called Freytag's triangle or Freytag's pyramid. If you look that up online, it's not important to know that, and it's not important to memorize all of these terms, but I will be using them through the rest of the unit, so it's good to have an idea of what I'm talking about. The opening of a short story is usually, or a traditional short story, I should say, is the exposition. This is where you give the reader some of the basic information about the story, what the character's name is, if they're going to be named, what they do for a living, what is important to them, and what's going on in their lives overall. That's the exposition, usually very low tension. Then we have what is called the inciting incident. That's when the character starts to act to get what they want, and tension begins to build. And as tension builds, we have what is called rising action. In the story, tension is building and building and building until we hit the climax of the story, where a character either gets or doesn't get what they want. But this is the moment of highest tension, of highest emotion in the story. And then after that, we have what is called falling action, or denouement, or resolution, whatever you want to call it. This is when tension dissipates after that climax, where the reader gets to learn what the character or characters' lives are going to be like after that part of the story. We might not get all of the answers that we're looking for. We probably won't get a happily ever after, for instance, but things are resolved and we get an idea of what their lives will be like moving forward. Now, the rising action consists of a number of smaller conflicts that build tension and release it. It isn't just this smooth curve tension builds along this curve. No, what we have are a series of smaller conflicts where a character is acting and failing, or acting and succeeding to get closer to what they want, and tension after each one of these attempts in a traditional story. Tension is going to fall again. So this is a good way of dealing with tension. You don't want to just keep on throwing actions and exciting events at your reader. You want to give them a chance to breathe after tension has been dealt with in some small way. So letting the tension relax after each of these events is a good way of allowing your reader to process what has happened, allowing them to understand how those events have changed your characters' lives, which is something that should happen. These events that are happening, all of these high tension events, should change your characters' lives. So those are the basics of a plot in a traditional short story. That's what we expect to see. In practice, though, it can be a little more intense than that. In practice, like we see in Sonny's Blues, we start out with a little exposition, and then there is a jump in time during which our narrator's daughter dies, which gets almost no time in the beginning of the story when it actually happens. And then Sonny is there already, and tension ramps up very quickly at that point. Sonny and the narrator have some issues, we know from our exposition, which has told us that already. And then suddenly they're together in a taxi, and Sonny is going to come and live at the narrator's place. Then we get some more backstory, some more exposition, some more clear ideas of what the problem is between the two, what life was like between the two of them, why they have issues with each other, which could happen in exposition. Instead, it happens in the rising action. And if you go back and look at that, even the things that happen in their past are told in this series of peaks and valleys when it comes to tension. The interactions that the two of them have are conflicts, they're arguments, and also the conversation that our narrator has with his mother about Sonny, where he learns about his father and his uncle, which he never knew about before. Those are small conflicts that build tension in the story. So in practice, plot is not necessarily going to look like a perfect arc like this, and our climax and resolution aren't necessarily going to be exactly what we expect them to be. In Sonny's Blues, for instance, our character, pause the video for a moment and try to think about what our narrator wants. What is it that he wants? So if you look at the promise that our narrator made to his mother, he said that he promised to keep Sonny safe. He wants Sonny to be able to make a living and to be happy. He doesn't want his brother to suffer. He doesn't want him to have a hard life. Those are all things that he wants. Now, at the climax and during the falling action for this story, our character does not get what he wants. In fact, we're told, more or less, that it is impossible for our narrator to get what he wants. So, if you think about climax and resolution, the conflict of the story, the thing that makes the tension build is what the character wants. But climax and resolution are more often in literary fiction, in the fiction that we're going to be reading in this unit, they're more often about what the character needs. And this is where that character growth that I talked about before comes into play. Through trying and failing, or trying and nearly getting what they want, a character should grow. They should change as a person. There are stories where a character's wants and needs are the same thing, or where a character's needs are never really addressed. Children's books, fairy tales do this. A lot of pulp fiction that is just made to sell books, a lot of that does this. Some flavors of genre fiction, although to be honest, there are plenty of children's books, plenty of pulp fiction, plenty of pieces of genre fiction that do have character growth and do deal with what a character needs and has to get in their life, what they're missing, their character flaw. Fixing that character flaw is more a focus of the climax and resolution of those stories than what a character says that they want. So I want you to think about those things. What is it that our narrator in Sonny's Blues needs? Well, going back to the inciting incident, when his daughter dies, which is just glossed over really quickly the first time it's mentioned, and then we go into more detail in the middle of the story. And then at the end of the story, when Sonny is playing the piano and our narrator is watching, he finally feels he feels like crying again, thinking about his daughter at that moment. So what our narrator needs is, I think, a deeper understanding of his brother. What he needs is to recognize that his brother is a human and he can't keep him safe all the time, just like he couldn't keep his daughter safe. He couldn't protect his daughter from what was going to happen to her. He can't protect Sonny from everything that's going to happen to him in the world, but he does need to be there for him. And that's something that our narrator knows that he failed to do. But I think moving forward, do I know for sure that our narrator is going to be there for Sonny? No, but the way that that story ends makes me think that he's going to try. And that's what he needs. He needs to be a brother for Sonny in a way that he hasn't been before. Okay, yeah, we talked about that ending of Sonny's Blues already. Okay, the weekly writing exercise, there's a full prompt on Blackboard, but basically this is what I'm asking you to do. Make a little character sketch, and then I'm going to ask you to write a paragraph or two of exposition, just sharing all this information with a reader the way that you would share it. Remember to be vivid, appeal to the senses, and try to write it in a way that's engaging and going to make your reader want to read more. All right, that's it for now. Thanks.